Welcome to Security Watch. This is Zain Khan. Today, the topic of our show revolves around the Afghan peace process and also Pak-US relations. Today, the special guest of our show is General Ehsan Haq. General Ehsan is Pakistan's former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Committee and also Pakistan's former DG ISI. General Ehsan is currently the chairman of advisory board of Pakistan House, an Islamabad-based think tank. Our second guest, as always, is Mr. Athar Javed. Mr. Rana Athar Javed is a DG Pakistan House and also a senior geopolitical analyst. Welcome to our show, General Ehsan Haq. It is a pleasure having you on our show, sir.
Thank you.
Welcome to our show, Mr. Athar Javed. It's a pleasure having you on our show as always.
Thank you very much, Zain.
General Ehsan, I want to get to the first question. What is your assessment of the Doha peace process, and what are the challenges, and how should Pakistan tackle India's negative role in Afghanistan?
Well, the first thing is that given the conflict in Afghanistan and its protraction over the last 4 decades, everybody should view Doha and the prospects of peace in Afghanistan positively. Because although, in my view, it's the first step towards moving or achieving peace in Afghanistan and commencing a full-fledged peace process in Afghanistan, but I think it's a very important first step for a deal or an agreement between the United States and the Taliban. And I think this is the first and most significant opportunity and breakthrough for peace in Afghanistan that we have witnessed in the last couple of decades. I am very positive. I feel that given the realities in Afghanistan, the various stakeholders in Afghanistan have no other option but to avail of this opportunity and move towards lasting peace in Afghanistan. Let me add also that there was no military solution in Afghanistan. And we have seen this conflict spread over the last 2 decades because a military solution was being sought. In some ways, Pakistan's position on Afghanistan and on our position on a peaceful solution in Afghanistan stands vindicated. Because right after 9/11, this is exactly what we said. There is no military solution. Then over the years, we continue to say that unless the withdrawal of foreign forces is on the table, there cannot be a solution. There can't be a political resolution. And we have seen down the line, this is exactly what happened. So I view this as a very, very positive development. And I am confident that it will lead to lasting peace in that country. Something for which Pakistan has been totally committed from the outset, and for which we have really sacrificed over the years. Now, coming on to the role of India, and let me say it in a broader sense. As we looked at the prospects of peace in Afghanistan, and as the peace process started, I am on record saying it on the media, and this has been also Pakistan's position, that the peace process will have challenges in 4 dimensions. And these dimensions are, first, there will be a challenge in Washington, D.C. the domestic politics of the United States will try and undermine this. And we are witnessing that all along. There are domestic US political issues coming up, the latest being the issue of the so-called Russian bounties on American military personnel. And let me be a little cynical. In fact, bounties and head monies are a part of the US culture. And it is they who mainstreamed and, in fact, gave acceptability to head monies and bounties for citizens from Afghanistan, citizens from Pakistan, citizens from Arab countries, citizens from Iran, and many other countries. So it is somewhat, poetic justice that is now being debated in Washington, that there are bounties being put on the military, the US military personnel in Afghanistan. Now, the second dimension of this challenge to the peace process would be in Kabul. And we are finding that. We are finding the resistance to the release of the Taliban prisoners. We are finding escalation in violence and the so-called offensive by the Afghan Defense Forces. That is the second element. And of course, the Afghan domestic politics are coming in the way. The third dimension, we always said, would be in the region. And the regional powers who see an advantage in the continuation of conflict in Afghanistan, particularly India. They think this paradigm of conflict, this paradigm of foreign presence in Afghanistan is the opportunity on which they had piggybacked to develop their influence in Afghanistan. And they feel that if there is a peace process and if the peace process succeeds and there is no more foreign military presence in Afghanistan, then their ability to dominate and retain a dominating influence in Afghanistan will not be there anymore. And the fourth dimension we thought would be amongst the Taliban also. There have been some reports, but I think most of them are misplaced. One perception that is being thrown around is that the rise of Mullah Yaqub in the Afghan Taliban hierarchy is indicative of some infighting. Well, my information is that it's not so. I think he has come up because of his capabilities and of course also because he is the son of Mullah Omar. His credentials for having an important position in the Taliban leadership are very sound. But obviously, as the peace process moves on, we should expect that these challenges will continue to be around. Now, specifically coming to India, I think we have to be very careful. Pakistan's position has been that we have no problems. Afghanistan is an independent country. It has the right to have relations with any other country, number one. Second, we have no objection to the Indians, supporting economic development in Afghanistan. But obviously, we are very seriously concerned where India exploits and uses its presence in Afghanistan to destabilize Pakistan's two western provinces in particular. And we have seen its support to the BLA and the recent attack on the Pakistan Stock Exchange in Karachi by the BLA, which clearly has the fingerprints of the Indian intelligence service RAW on it. And we also have Pakistan is well aware that these elements are operating out of Afghanistan as a consequence of connivance by the Afghan intelligence and the Indian intelligence. And the most unfortunate aspect of this is that the US has substantial uh, intelligence capabilities in Afghanistan, but unfortunately, they are overlooking these activities that are coming out of Afghanistan against Pakistan, and these are being ignored.
Mr. Athar Javed, would you like to add your observation to what General Ehsan just said? And would you like to ask a question to the General?
To be honest, because as we all know globally as well, he is authority on these subjects. I would like to just maybe ask more to Sir, and maybe his analysis would help us to understand further that there is an issue, as you said, about that the US has substantial intelligence on activities of RAW and the connivance with NDS. And also the placement, everybody knows, in different ministries and advisors in the Interior Ministry, Intelligence Ministry. Is there a possibility the US at some point would understand that this would undermine their own efforts to establish peace? If they really want to establish peace, then they must support Taliban and Afghan government and to neutralize these elements, because these elements is projected by the Afghan government that they are like rogue elements at their own, but it is not correct. So maybe, sir, would you like to shed light on this further to open it up more for us to understand, are there more underlying problems here?
Yes. As I said, as we looked at the prospects of a peace process, it was very clear, not only in Pakistan, but internationally, that there would be challenges. And the most profound challenge, as I said, would be in the US domestic politics and in Kabul. Now, in Kabul, over the last 20 years, there's a very large and very influential segment of Afghanistan's leadership, political leadership, and other segments of the society who have developed a stake in the continuation of the conflict and violence. And they feel that any change in this paradigm would be to their disadvantage. Now, and you find these elements are entrenched in very important positions, and they have made no secret about their opposition to the peace process. The most clear example is that of Mr. Amrullah Saleh, the former head of the Afghan NDS, and he happens to be the vice president of Afghanistan. Even President Ashraf Ghani knows, and I'm sure any American who has any exposure to the Afghan situation is very well aware of Amrullah Saleh's views on the peace process, his intense animosity towards Pakistan and the normalization of relations between Pakistan and Afghanistan, and a hardline approach even on ethnic issues to the disadvantage of the Pashtuns. So these are well known. I mean, he is the vice president. There are many other such people in the Afghan political hierarchy, in the intelligence hierarchy, in the military hierarchy, people who would like to drag down this process. And it is reflected in some serious incidents, serious security incidents in Afghanistan in the last few months, ever since the peace deal was signed on 29th of February. You found that there was this attack on the Sikh temple, Gurdwara as it's called. Then there was an attack on the children's hospital. And we have found that these ultimately were not related to, nobody suspected the Taliban of having done that. So there are question marks as who is behind these. Also, there is a sense amongst these elements who oppose or would like to retard this peace process, that if they can delay it till the next US election in November, then maybe if there is a new president elected in the United States, or there is a change of priorities of President Trump on his Afghanistan policy, then they expect that they may have an opportunity to continue with their present position of domination of the Afghan scene and able to safeguard their stakes in Afghanistan.
General San, I'd like to ask a very important question. In the wake of current development and involvements in all stakeholders in Afghanistan, what is the future of Pakistan and American relations, Pak-US relations, especially because Pakistan is facilitating the peace process? How do you see the relationship of Pakistan and the US unfolding?
As you are well aware, there is a history of Pakistan-US relations, sometimes described as a sine wave, and sometimes as highs and lows. And we have found that this relationship, despite the difficulties, have somehow or the other lived on. Because despite in the post 9/11 scenario, we feel Pakistan has greater opportunities in the regional environment for its foreign policy options. But it is a conviction in Pakistan that despite more options, Pakistan would like to have the best of relations with the United States, because there are many things that we can get from other countries, but there are many things that we cannot get from other countries, which we can only get from the United States, given its technological, its academic, and its soft power capabilities. And Pakistan would like to take advantage of that. As you know, there is a large Pakistani diaspora in the United States itself, which is indicative of Pakistanis' desire, and I'm saying the popular desire, to have good relations with the United States. However, let me tell you, as far as Afghanistan is concerned, Pakistan is striving for peace in Afghanistan for its own best interests, for very selfish interests, because we are convinced that if there's no peace in Afghanistan, we can't hope to have peace and stability and progress in Pakistan. So there is a very strong commonality of interest between the objectives for a stable and peaceful Afghanistan between the United States and Pakistan. And it's not now. From the outset, post 9/11, we have repeatedly been highlighting this, that Pakistan will be prepared to play a very substantial, very positive role to bring about, to promote a peace process in Afghanistan. Unfortunately, it wasn't the US policy till President Trump changed that policy. If you recall, when President Trump took over as the president, even his South Asia policy was more kinetic. It was more, and that is why we found that in his first 2 years, it was the US Air Force's bombing which was causing most of the casualties in Afghanistan. And his advisors, particularly his military advisors, had convinced him that they can deliver a victory. I'm glad after 2 years in his tenure, he fell back to his election promises of withdrawing all of ending all the wars and withdrawing or pulling back US forces from other parts of the world back to the US. And that was I think this policy of President Trump is the center of gravity of the process, of the peace process. That is why it is very essential that the intra-Afghan dialogue is underway at the earliest, and it achieves irreversible progress in the first tenure of President Trump. And that is the reason why those who want to derail this process are trying to delay, because they feel that's the only way that they can undermine this policy or this strategy of President Trump to, to seek a peaceful solution and withdraw US forces from Afghanistan.
Mr. Athar, what is your point of argument since you're a senior geopolitical analyst? Please add something.
Yeah, please. No, I have in mind, I was just going to add what Sir said. I'm going to pick up a very important point he mentioned about the discussion that how military advisors in the first 2 years described the Afghan situation, that bombing out the civilians would have them a victory, basically created a very clear strategic deception for President Trump and his team. I think what happened is that we in Pakistan kept on facilitating and sustaining what has been the policy. But there is a need now on the part of the United States to do more in terms of sustain what they have point of departure now from their previous position. They have, in order to sustain this one, they really need to improve this image of Pakistan-US relation, where the US has been looked by the general public in Pakistan, and the popular image is that our relationship is more of transactional relationship. On the other hand, for all these 50, 60 years, Pakistan sided with the international community, first Afghan war, this second one, and wherever Pakistan has been required to stabilize South Asia. So there is a need, I think, for the US to do more in terms of sustaining it. As General Sahib very correctly pointed out, that the delaying peace mean also denying peace. There is a possibility, as he pointed out, and we hope that it will go on the positive side.
General Ehsan, would you like to add something to what Mr. Rana Athar Javed just said?
Yes, given the size of Pakistan, we are a very, very big country. One of the, our more than 220 million Pakistanis. We rank in the top 6, 7 countries in the world in size of our population. And we are seriously underdeveloped, which means we need almost everything for our development. We yet have to, progress. We have to develop in all facets of life, which gives us huge economic potential and opportunity. And we think beyond Afghanistan, on its own merit, Pakistan, located in a very, very tough neighborhood, but a very critical strategic landscape, will always be of importance to the world, to the international community, and particularly to the United States. So on our own merits, I think the US-Pakistan relations should be and must be sustained and must move forward.
General Ehsan, what do you recommend to America, Pakistan, and Afghanistan in terms of negotiating a comprehensive peace, given the fact that the Taliban will be part of a future national government? What's your take on this?
Now, let me take you back before the events of 9/11. If you go back to those times, and any student of the region of Afghanistan will tell you that the Pakistan government's policies after the rise of the Taliban and even before the rise of the Taliban, after the Soviet withdrawal, all through the 90s, our policy was that there should be a stable, inclusive, broad-based dispensation in Afghanistan. Because we thought that unless it is inclusive, unless it is broad-based, it will not be sustainable. Unfortunately, initially we found President Burhanuddin Rabbani and with him Ahmad Shah Massoud. They dominated the scene, and the so-called broad-based dispensation, which actually had come about as a consequence of Pakistani mediation and an Islamabad accord, it did not work. And the two thwarted the entry of the agreed Prime Minister at that time, Mr. Hikmatyar, to even enter Kabul. And then with the rise of the Taliban, again, the pendulum swung in the other direction. Then President Rabbani, who called himself the president, the legal president of Afghanistan, and Ahmad Shah Massoud, the defense minister, they couldn't enter Kabul. All through this time, Pakistan's endeavor was that there should be a reconciliation between these elements and there should be a broad-based government including all these elements, and it is only then that Afghanistan can have a stable and peaceful government, peaceful dispensation. Our policy even now would be the same, a broad-based, inclusive dispensation, which should include all the stakeholders, all ethnic and political forces of Afghanistan should be represented in this dispensation. Unless that happens, it is my considered opinion that Afghanistan will again go back to the way it was in the 90s, into a civil war, into a civil conflict situation. So it is incumbent upon all friends of Afghanistan, particularly the United States and of course Pakistan. This is Pakistan's views on, very considered views on this, that we must try and bring about an inclusive dispensation. We should have the Taliban and we should have all the other political stakeholders in Afghanistan as a part of that dispensation.
Mr. Athar Javed, would you like to add your observation to what General Ehsan just said?
A very small point, really. That's regarding, again, sort of repeating myself and what General Saab mentioned in the earlier question, the answer to your question, was about India's hosting and sponsorship of those elements which had been striving to have a partial inclusiveness. That is regarding the previously called Northern Alliance and all those elements which would definitely would like to exploit and explore negative opportunities from this peace process. I think that also to be looked after while we are moving towards a very positive development in Afghanistan.
General Ehsan, in the recent clash between China and India, it has created more uncertainty in South Asia. How do you see this, and how will it affect India's strategic design towards Pakistan? Also, what needs to be done regarding the plight of the Kashmiri people? Yes.
2014, when the Indians were going through the general elections and Prime Minister Modi was the most was the most favorite candidate to become the next Prime Minister of India. And since he had been the Chief Minister of Gujarat, there were two qualities identified about his personality and his performance as the Chief Minister. First was his role in the communal violence in Gujarat and, the genocide of Muslims in Gujarat, because of which now Prime Minister Modi, there was a ban on his travel internationally. He couldn't travel to the United States till as late as 2012 or 13. And he could not get a visa for many other European countries. So this was one aspect of his personality and his profile. The second was that Gujarat, during his tenure as the Chief Minister, had economically progressed very significantly. So when the 2014 elections were being debated, the speculation was which trajectory will the future Prime Minister Modi take? Will it be the communal hatred trajectory, or will it be the economic progress trajectory? And we all prayed and hoped that it will be the later, and it will be that India will economically prosper and the Gujarat model will be replicated at the national level. However, over the last 5 years, 6 years, we have seen that it has been the earlier trajectory. It's Modi, the communalist, Modi, who was responsible for the genocide in Gujarat. It was that trajectory which was to prevail in India. And we saw its impact within India and with India's neighbors. We have seen that today India is at odds. Of course, Pakistan with us, it's a perpetual enmity. And he has tried to project his muscular policy towards Pakistan to his people as a macho leader. But this muscular approach he has also adopted towards Nepal, Sri Lanka, in which there was a change of government in Sri Lanka in 2015, if you recall. And it was attributed to being a regime change by India. And then, of course, we later see its impact in Nepal, even countries like Bhutan, and of course the Awami League, Bangladesh is having difficulty coping with this muscular policy of Modi. Prime Minister Modi, in his hegemonic mindset and his global power ambitions, feels South Asia is his sphere of influence and that nobody else has a right to have relations with any of the South Asian countries, more so China. And that is why there has been very intense diplomatic, economic competition and resistance by India to China's Belt Road Initiative and its economic investment, whether it is the CPEC in Pakistan, whether it is the Belt Road Initiative cooperation with Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, and other countries. So this has come on from that time. We found that encouraged by Western, promotions of a shining India model, the Modi's muscular approach went a step further, and we first witnessed it in the Doklam crisis in 2017, when the Indians, out of the blue, tried to encroach and tried to block the Chinese in very legitimate Chinese territories on the line of actual control. Of course, The Chinese played it diplomatically, but they realized and they saw through the Indian designs. And now we find that the Chinese were better prepared this time for the Indian game in Ladakh. And please recall that all this time, starting from 2014, as a manifestation of this muscular policy, India has embarked on very significant investment in the development of border infrastructure on the line of actual control, as well as other, including on the border with Pakistan. So the Chinese were watching this, and they were not prepared to accept any change of status quo. Not only was there a physical change of status quo at various places as a consequence of these developments of infrastructure, but there was a huge political change of status quo last year when the Indian changed the status of the Jammu and Kashmir to and repealed Article 35A and Article 370 of the Indian Constitution, which gave a special status to Jammu and Kashmir. And the Chinese vociferously protested against that. But India didn't seem to get the message. Thanks to the Western support in the UN Security Council and in the Western media for the Indian position. Now, of course, the Chinese were better prepared. And with the onset of the spring and summer seasons, they were able to thwart the Indian designs for further ingresses and developments along the line of control. And we have seen the outcome. India stands embarrassed, and they have realized, I hope they have realized, it's my hope, realized the follies of their muscular, combative, aggressive policies towards this neighborhood. With regards to Kashmir, Pakistan must very strongly support the legitimate aspirations and rights of the Kashmiri people. And let me tell you, this is not a short time. This is not a short time activity. The Indians have been trying for the last 70 years to crush the aspirations of the Kashmiri people, and they have not succeeded. And no maneuvering with the Indian articles of their constitutions or any other security or administrative measures will be able to will enable them to crush these aspirations. This is a very strong conviction amongst the Kashmiris and amongst the people of Pakistan. And this is my assessment that the Indian Delhi's approach to Kashmir is security centric. It is administrative. It's not political. It's not based on humanitarian considerations. And such a policy can never succeed against a people determined to safeguard their aspirations. And I am convinced that over a period of time, the Indians will also realize the follies of their policies, and they will be compelled to change these policies.
Mr. Athar, what is your point of argument since you're a senior geopolitical analyst? Please add something.
Yes, I think this is a very important question. First, I give my assessment, then I will ask General Saab to finally close the discussion with his approach and his recommendation to Pakistan. We are really, I think, we are not, I would say, we are expecting, in terms of strategic expectation, that after humiliation and surrender to Chinese, India would definitely try to show that the macho, symbolical machoism to Pakistan, through a false flag operation like they did in last year, February, or try to accuse Pakistan against of something within mainland or in the Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. So we think that India, after de-escalating from there, would definitely like to do something in Gilgit-Baltistan or in AJK, but because of the rhetoric which has been fueling since last year August, the rhetoric has really mounted in a way in which it is forcing Indian generals, even the chief of defense, he passed many non-professional comments, and also their air chief. So definitely this is my concern as well as a Pakistani. And I'd like to ask General Saab that then he can close the discussion, that what is his views on that and how actually Pakistan should respond to.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to say two things on this before I say some concluding words. First is the impact of the Hindutva ideology on the Indian armed forces and its visible manifestations that we are seeing. Whether it is their present chief of defense staff, whether it is their service chiefs, or whether it's their other senior military commanders, they were already concerned in India and internationally that this ideology of Hindutva is penetrating into the ethos of the Indian armed forces. And we found that one of their ex-army chief is a vice minister. Several of them have joined BJP. And so we find that the attitude of the Indian military commanders and their statements are more, representative of the RSS, VHP, BJP thinking. And of course, one aspect is they're trying to please their political masters. But second is this ideological shift that has emerged in the thinking and attitudes and behaviors. And as I said, the whole ethos of the Indian armed forces, which previously we thought, because of their colonial experience and heritage, were more secular in their approach and were more apolitical in their approach. So this is the first thing that we have to see in these statements and in these. The second thing is that if India has to embark on a military adventure against Pakistan, that will have to be based on the realities, on the military realities and capabilities of India and Pakistan. And if our capabilities, our ability to deter such an adventure was not adequate, then you can expect India to come in any time. But the Indians very well know it, that we have a potent deterrence capability, and that any attempt they make will be repulsed, and they will have to, again, they will stand humiliated, as happened on 27th of February 2019 after their violations of our airspace. But as I mentioned the earlier point, the impact of Hindutva. Now, the Indian military also, instead of speaking on professional, realities of the military situation, are speaking politically to please their political masters, and address the domestic audience. So I'm sure in more, in their own, when they're more deliberate in their consideration, they would realize that they can only do fake fake encounters or fake, as we saw last year, the phony strikes, but an actual military adventure against Pakistan, in my view, would not be feasible given the force, the military ratios, and the capabilities of Pakistan's deterrence.
Thank you so much, General Ehsanul Haq, for being on Security Watch. It was a pleasure having you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Athar Javed. It was a pleasure having you as always.
Thank you very much, Zain.
This was General Ehsanul Haq, Pakistan's former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Committee and also Pakistan's former DG ISI, and currently the chairman of the advisory board of Pakistan House, an Islamabad-based think tank. He doesn't really appear on media much. We're thankful for his time to being on Security Watch. Our second guest, as always, Mr. Athar Javed. We discussed India's designs in South Asia, the Afghan peace process, and also, most importantly, Pakistan and American relations, Pak-US relations. Until the next episode of Security Watch, keep on watching Security Watch. This is Zain Khan. Take care. Goodbye.